And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winnick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. Today, my guest is RT Stokes. RT is a really interesting background, military background, life coach, author, speaker. The list goes on. So he's certainly been in this space for quite a while, and I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to share with us today. So welcome aboard, RT.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
So I'm going to ask you sort of a seems like a fairly obvious question, but this isn't a linear thing. So it's sort of, if you were thinking about your life or your career 10, 15 years ago versus where it is now, I think the obvious question is how the hell did you get here?
Well, I actually got here by ways of recovering from mistakes. And I would say that when I talk about myself and when I describe myself, I say I'm a submarine veteran because I went into the Navy. And when I went into the Navy, I dove into the ocean, but it gave me the opportunity to dive deeper in myself. When I got out of the Navy, I found that my career in the professional realm allowed me to continue through human resources, through quality assurance. I was continuing to dive deeper into problems, whether it was in my personal life or professional life, and try to bring solutions to the surface.
So is that diving deep an innate sort of, they'd probably use the term growth mindset today, curiosity. Where do you think that comes from?
I love it. I love it. I think the challenge that we have is historically, for example, if we look at self improvement to me can be shallow. I don't know how deep we get with it. So now we're looking at more iterative improvement or even personal innovation. If I could start utilizing that term, we look at innovation from a corporate or technology standpoint. How can we innovate to take these leap strides? And sometimes, at least with my life, there were things I didn't need to improve. I just need to get rid of and I need to innovate. How can I be a better me by taking this piece completely off and trying to innovate and bring more invention and ideas into my life?
I love that. So compare or contrast that personal innovation, because I like that, with what I would call there's a whole genre of life hacking.
Yes, yes. I love life hacking. I love us constantly challenging something that might be a standard and how can we improve on top of it? At the same time, I believe that there is so much richness and wealth in the tradition, the history that's there. Looking at the 7 habits of highly effective people and saying, okay, I'm going to introduce submerged principles in my book. How can I improve on top of that? Or looking at Daniel Goleman's emotional intelligence and me going in a submarine, it was one of the first books I read. How can I ensure when I'm submerged that I am able to optimize myself and still perform at the best?
I love that. I love that. So let's dive into some of the specifics, right? So along the way, you've had to make a bunch of decisions, and if you're anything like anybody else, some of those have worked out well, and some less than well, right? So talk about maybe even some of the tactical. So you've written a book, you speak. What is the process by which you go through to say, aha, this is how I'm going to do X, and then X I hope leads to Y, and then if it doesn't, I'm going to pivot. Like because this is where people get sort of junked up here because there isn't
Sure.
necessarily. If you're opening a donut shop, the metric is how many donuts do I need to sell a day to
Right.
keep the lights on? You know?
So I work in a 3-part process. I work purpose, vision, and mission. And almost from a supply chain cycle, I'm going to focus on here's my procurement where I receive the gifts, the orders that are placed upon me, and that's the area of my purpose. Then I come up with this area of manufacturing and assembly, which is my vision. I start to pull things together. And then I get into an area where I execute and I deliver, which is my mission. And I work through those 3 phases. If I have a vision that isn't connected to my base, then I know that that's a mission that I shouldn't take on. And one of the challenges that you can see across society today is we have people who are mission driven, but they don't have a base. So when the mission's accomplished, the question is, well, what's it all for? Why don't I feel fulfilled? Why don't I feel better about what I've accomplished? Because we didn't take time to really understand what is our base, what is our purpose.
So you've got to do that on the front end. So let's dive into that in terms of some of your stuff, right? So you've written a book and you speak. Just describe for us. Maybe let's take a half a step back. Sort of a typical month in the life of. in terms of how you service your clients, how you generate business, how you get the name out, how do you, do your own thing? Just sort of walk us through that if you could.
Sure. So the primary thing that I do is listen as much as possible. So social media is a great stream for me to understand from the audience what they want to hear, how my content resonates. So it's a little bit of a mix. I'm putting out a lot of material in different areas, different looks and feels, different words, and I'm trying to get a sense of what that audience looks like from a demographic standpoint.
But let's push on that. So I
Okay.
want to push on that because I think
Sure.
it's essential that what you said, and I'm paraphrasing, because sort of social media is the laboratory, right? You put
Yeah.
stuff out there.
Yeah.
So I think what happens is, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, it gives you maybe an inkling, and then you validate it with the data that
Oh, yes.
these type of people could use my help, or this is a thing. So go there, because a lot of people just are using social media without. I mean, they're just using it as a broadcasting mechanism, not as the beautiful research mechanism that it could
Yes, yes. I really love your point there. I'm just smiling with joy.
be.
It's a very, very sophisticated system. The way that Twitter works versus LinkedIn versus Instagram versus Facebook, it's a very sophisticated system as far as the timing, the demographics, and the preferences, how people like to be reached. Some people just love podcasts, and that's all that they want to respond to. Some people like video. So having an idea of where your audience is really takes research to get deep. And that's one thing I wanted to do. Going back to the submarine analogy, it wasn't so much my comfort in social media, but I was willing to get uncomfortable to reach people where they were comfortable communicating, where they were comfortable with their social
I
preferences.
love it. So I want to just expand on that a little bit. So it could be, you said, it could be podcast, it could be video, it could be other forms of social media. Same message,
Yes.
but formatted in the way that is appropriate for those modalities, because everybody's got preferences, right? There could be some dude that listens to podcast in his car or at the gym that you would never get if you didn't have that medium, and somebody else that prefers to read, and somebody else is looking for something, a quick hit that's visually appealing. And I think what happens is, because we all have our own dominant preferences, we just think the world's like us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the analytics, I mean, Twitter will provide analytics. Any social media platform out there will provide analytics. Facebook will provide analytics, LinkedIn, and going in and seeing where your audience is, what their preferences are, what they like hearing, what the demographics are from an age perspective. There was a podcast that I had where I used the term "it's not too late," and it was interesting. I thought that that would hit the older age groups, but it actually was like in the 20, 30-year-olds who were responding to it.
Oh,
So
I like that.
being able to iterate and put information out there, the one thing that we can't do is wait. We have to continue to push
Right,
information
right.
out there and just be aggressive and pursue our audience.
So could you give maybe a specific example of, you put X out over social media and it taught you Y, and as a result of that, you did whatever the next Z, whatever. I'm losing my letters. You did something.
Sure. So with Facebook, I initially started and I would just put out messages and I would do the same thing with Twitter. I wasn't too comfortable with Instagram because I didn't want to put out a lot of pictures of myself.
Okay.
What I started doing was creating these beautiful graphics and then just putting the text on top of them. And it started to increase the amount of engagement that I had. So it was a way where I was able to stick with my style. I didn't feel like I had to compromise to jump on a platform. And right now, Instagram is probably one of the top performing platforms for me, along with Facebook.
So, but let's talk about the difference between Instagram and Facebook, for example. So, Instagram, very quick, very visual, not a lot of room for depth.
Yes.
So, it seems to me it's almost it's probably not a great term, but a tripwire, right? Like I could just like pop you out of distraction and get you look at something visually appealing with some words.
Yeah.
They're not going to impulsively actually do something from that other than, tell me more.
Yes. Yes. Instagram are the digital billboards on our social media highway. Uh, Hopefully they'll catch our attention. We're going by really quick. We're
Yeah.
scrolling up and down. Hopefully we see something there that's attractive and something that's relevant to our message. So for me, I'm trying to use a lot of unconscious messaging that sticks with people. Just click on it, like it, and I just continue to be consistent to deliver that message. Facebook, people really want to know you. They want to get comfortable and know exactly what your background is, maybe what you're doing on a daily basis.
Excellent. If you're enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about our podcast, please leave us a review and share it with your friends. We're available on Apple Podcast and on all major listening apps, as well as at thoughtleadershipleverage.com/podcasts. I want to shift for a moment, if we could, to books, authorship, that whole universe. So tell us what you've done there that's worked and what you've done there that hasn't, and what you would never do in the future, but what you would definitely do in the future.
Sure. With books, I believe in partnership. I believe in it's so intimate, Peter, because you're taking time to express something inside of you. So for me, I felt very vulnerable writing something down and knowing that I couldn't go back and edit it later. The one thing that I wish I would have done more of is taking my writing, putting it in front of people, and making sure that I was articulating the message in such a way that it made sense to them.
So when you say taking your writing, you're talking about before publishing, because unlike a blog, you put out a blog, get some feedback, you could tweak it, edit it, go in a different directions. You're
Right.
saying
Right.
using the social media as the lab to put out the concept, maybe not the exact chapters and such.
And you don't even need to use social media. It could be, Peter, I've got a chapter. Here's the
Got
concept,
it.
and here's how I'm trying to relay that concept. Does it make sense to you?
Got it.
So being able to reach out to people, and here's what I found: people who know you and know how you talk and know how you communicate, know the different terms that you use to relay ideas, and then people who also will be able to tell you that's not going to resonate with an audience. They won't know what you're talking about. Those people made me a better writer.
And you've got to give those people permission to say, please tell me if this sucks. Like, please don't placate me.
Yeah. Right.
No, because I think sometimes that's what happens. Because I get people send me things all the times that are friends, and I'm like, listen, do you want like
Yeah.
the real deal? Can you like? And not that I'm trying to be helpful, but
Yes.
I don't want to tell you that like, listen, some people have kids that have big ears and are funny looking. Like, can you take it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Peter, I love what you're saying. It's fundamental to thought leadership for us to be able to receive the thoughts of others and receive that criticism and take it in a healthy manner. If our thoughts are only filled of what we think, then it's not thought
Yeah,
leadership.
totally.
There's no leadership component to it.
And I've had several folks, clients, and nod along the way say, wow, based on your feedback, and it wasn't like a total radical change, but they pivoted a little bit or tweaked it a little bit and whatever. And that modification was probably the difference between and wow.
Yes, when I left my corporate job, I was the inspired learning leader, so I would talk a lot. Inspiration was part of my job in the corporate environment, so it was a dream job. It was very tough to leave. But what I found was, and someone even told me, you were so good at talking, the words sometimes you don't need the words to really communicate. And for me, I was like, oh my goodness, I need to take more time to focus on what I'm saying. So backing into the book was actually my development need. It was my weak spot. It was the area where I needed to improve. Working with editors, oh, Peter, it hurt. It hurt when they told me those things, right? Things that I wrote that they literally didn't want to improve. They just pulled it out of the book. No, we have the slightest idea what you're saying. We're pulling that out. And it made me a better
I love it.
communicator. So now I can blog with better
Yep.
articulation. Now I can send out messages that make more sense.
Cool. So how did you decide to publish? Did you go the traditional route? Did you go self? Did you like what did you learn about? Because here's what happens. A first time author goes down the path, and there's this ideal preconceived notions of how that will be or how that might be,
Yeah.
and then reality. And then there's a whole bunch of
Yeah.
non-content decisions, more business model decisions, distribution decisions, financial decisions, etc. So summarize that for us. What you learned along the way there.
Sure. So for me, I had to get my book out. So I self-published. I didn't want to spend a lot of time marketing my book to publishers. I wanted to work directly with people like yourself and like your audience to say, this is why I created this book. This is why this book matters. This is how this book will improve your life. And I wanted to be able to pitch directly to people. And that's what I feel with self-publishing I do. Now, with self-publishing, you don't need to self-produce. There are a lot of hybrid publishers out there that will help you self-published. So they'll help you with the editing, they'll help you with the book cover, they'll help you with the different components. So you're not all by yourself if you self-publish. It's really not self.
Right. And so for you, so first off, oftentimes people feel like they have to apologize for self-publishing, which I don't believe at all. But you mentioned time and control, right? So I think people don't understand
Yes.
just pragmatically, by the time you're ready to rock and roll and get a book out there, you want to give birth to that sucker, right? And then you go,
Yeah,
you understand the New York, traditional New York sort of publishing route, and it's like 18
totally.
months.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And control, like things like your cover, things like the title, things that might be important to you but might not be sexy enough for a publisher. Like, I think time and control are two issues. You didn't just touch on the business model piece of that? Can you touch on that?
Yes, and if I can add this, Peter, being in the corporate environment, I didn't have a strong social media audience. I was
Sure.
in a job. So for me, what I needed to do was I needed to push the book out there to be able to introduce myself to people. There is so much of a focus of being a top seller, being a bestseller on
Yeah.
Amazon or the New York Times or on some list. But if it's your very first book, get it out there.
Yep.
Get it out there, get behind your message and push it. You've been able to validate your message by putting it in print and then just push it. Trying to focus on having a bestseller doesn't necessarily mean that you have the book that will have the best impact on the
Well,
people.
and quite frankly, the deeper you get into it, you realize that, so let's take an Amazon bestseller campaign.
Yes.
There's dozens of companies that will do that. It
Yes.
doesn't mean anything. It's a logistical thing to get, whatever, 17 people to buy your book at 4 in the morning. I'm being
Yes.
right, but there are ways to jig the system. The real trick is, what is that proxy for? Because I always ask people, when you say I want to be a bestseller, okay, let's define what that means, because like New York Times bestseller list, there's a mathematical definition of what that means over time, right?
That's right.
Amazon's is a dynamic list. What is that proxy for you? Does it mean get the message out? Does it mean launch the business? Is it stroking your ego? Like, what do you really mean by that? And
Yeah.
let's turn that into a goal, and
Yes.
then make sure, is that really the goal you'd like to achieve, or you're willing to invest in to achieve?
Yes, and I love your question about the business model because the book is a business. For
Yeah.
me, my book, I'm not sure if people can tell when they pick it up, but when they get through it, they can tell it's a textbook. My
Yep.
plan is to teach online and provide courses the same way I used to teach human resources and Six Sigma. How do you ensure that we are able to solve problems? I want to be able to teach people how to ensure that they solve problems to have quality assurance for quality of life. So literally reverse engineered my process into a book.
Got
And I wrote the book preparing that I'm going to use this in an Instagram post. I'm going to use this in Facebook. I had to make sure that I wrote a book that I would be able to take apart and plug it into social media to to validate my expertise on the topic.
And I want to ask you well, it appears to me to be an obvious question, but a lot of people have this mindset of, well, if I put it all in the book and I sell it for $18, they'll never need me. Right? So
Right.
confirm or deny that theory for me.
We just have to be as pervasive as possible. I would love to think that I'm the only one with my message. I'm the only one with these great points. But I was told by a good friend and colleague, whoever they attribute to a quote or whoever they attribute to a message is the person who is out there owning it as much as possible. It's a different day and age right now. So you just have to be out there constantly pushing. If you don't want to tell anybody about your message, you don't want to tell anybody about your book because you're worried about people stealing it, you'll hold on to it so long and people will never own it.
Right. Well,
So you
nobody will steal it, but nobody will also,
that's
conversely,
right.
nobody know who the hell you are.
That's
And I
right.
always say, if you look at some of the greatest business books of all time, you mentioned, Seven Habits. The
Yes.
book didn't have four and say, send me a check for $12 and I'll send you the other three.
Right,
Right?
right.
Like, it's just, but a lot of people are in this sort of, I think some of it might be a Silicon Valley sort of stealth. You
Yes.
can't, confidentiality, et cetera, et cetera. And it's
Yeah.
just not true in this space.
Yes, yes. You have to create something that you can be completely behind. That's why for me, the bestseller didn't matter as much. What mattered was, can I wake up every single morning and get behind this message? Can I get on a call with Peter and talk about this message with conviction? Can I hand the book to someone who I don't even know and explain to why I think this book will change their lives? Can I place pictures that are reflective of the concepts in the book on Instagram and people will be able to pick them up with seconds of looking at them?
Good, love it. So as we start to wrap up here, I usually say land the plane, but in your case, I'll say, bring the submarine to the surface and make it
Thank you so much.
real.
It warms my heart to hear that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, 'cause we don't want to land a submarine. I don't know what that.
That's right.
So, what are the things that worked best for you, maybe tactically, on the book side in terms of not necessarily just sort of fiddling with the list and all that, but actually led you to the outcomes, the business outcomes that you've desired as a result of getting, all the work you're doing on social, getting that book out there. Give us some examples of some tactical things that people should consider.
Work from a strategy to the tactics. Hold yourself very accountable.
Hallelujah.
As an entrepreneur, you really don't know exactly what your success and failure is in each day. So be very, very, if I could use the term, hard with getting things done, but be soft if they don't, and iterate with a passion. I understand that that didn't work, but I'm going to get it tomorrow, or I'm going to stay up later tonight until it gets done. Without that accountability that you have from a day job, we just have to bring that rigor into our lives to make sure that we're getting things done.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing with us. I love your I just love the transparency and the honesty and the way that you take the business rigor and apply it to the murkiness of social, which a lot of people do one or the other. So thanks so much, RT. I appreciate your time and your insights.
Yes, sir. It's been an honor. Thank you.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.